Well, we've hit the top of the hour here, so why don't we get going? Some of you have come in early, got a chance to do a little Q&A, a little quiz, answering some quiz questions from Dana. Thanks for joining us for this World Council of Credit Unions virtual event, Future-Proofing Your Business with Leadership Development and Succession. I'm Greg Newman, Director of Communications for the World Council. It is vital to the future of the credit union movement for people in leadership positions to be constantly building a strong bench. And today's interactive session will teach you the importance of succession planning and effective talent management. This webinar is presented by Dana Elliott. She is the Learning and Development Manager at Kawartha Credit Union in Ontario, Canada. And as you can see, and you've heard, this session is technically being held as a Zoom meeting, so you are encouraged to participate throughout the next hour. I also want to let you know this session is being recorded. It's going to be available later today on the World Council YouTube channel. And now, without further ado, I'm excited to welcome in Dana Elliott, who will lead you through today's virtual event. Dana.
Thank you so much, Greg, and thank you so much to the World Council for having me here today to talk about this important topic. I want to start our meeting today with taking an opportunity to share some truths about myself and the place that I call home. So just wanted to let everybody know that I am not Indigenous. Rather, I am a settler of colonial ancestry. And although my heritage extends to England, Ireland, and the Netherlands, I, like many other settler people, have benefited greatly from living on Turtle Island. As a visitor on this land, I have an important responsibility to acknowledge the grounds on which I am privileged to be presenting from today. Kawartha Credit Union's head office is located in Nogojiwanong on Treaty 20 land in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, known as the Williams Treaty First Nations. I believe that it's not only important to recognize the Mississauga for their care of and their teachings of the earth and our relations with them, but to also honor those teachings through our interactions today and every day hereafter. In light of the treaty history and my understanding of my role as a treaty person, I'd like to move forward today with in our session just in a spirit of partnership and collaboration and reconciliation as we learn together. I also want to acknowledge that many of you are joining from different countries, different time zones. So whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, where you are, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And I'm going to ask that you go ahead and just take a moment type in the chat where you're joining from today. I already see, Michelle, you're joining us from Trinidad. Don from Preston, BC. Jenna Lynn, Trinidad and Tobago. Awesome. We got some people from Ghana and the US, Barbados, sunny Florida, Alaska. You guys probably still have a little bit of snow up there. Hamilton, yay, Reese. Kitchener, fantastic. Thanks so much. Today is going to be such an interactive session. Keep those fingers ready to type in the chat or even to come off mute as we kind of go through today's topics. If I'm expecting you to listen to me for the next 30 to 40 minutes, it's only fair that I tell you a little bit about myself. I am the Learning and Development Manager for Kawartha Credit Union, as was already mentioned. Our head office and I are both located in Ontario, Canada. We have 23 branches across our province, and our asset size is just over 2 billion Canadian dollars. I'm a founding member of the Ontario Young Leaders, which is a group that we created to empower those in the credit union system in our province under the age of 40. I have a bachelor's degree in human resources, a master's in adult education. I'm a certified HR leader, and I just attained my credit union leadership and coaching designation through the E-Leadership Academy in conjunction with Royal Roads University. I am a mom of two, and I am an avid ultimate frisbee player. I've worked in HR and learning and development for 20 years or so, and I am still learning. And every day I'm learning. And I'm excited to share some of my insights with you today in hopes that we can continue that learning together. Want you to go ahead and write in the chat now, how many years have you been working in your field? Curious to know. Seven years, 18 years, 9 years. A little under 2. Awesome, Daisy. Thank you for being here. 34 years, Nick. Cassie, 10 years. Sarah, 17. Wonderful. We have loads of years of experience to draw from as we walk through today's topic. So during the presentation, please feel free to ask questions or share your thoughts through the chat, and we'll have some time for discussion at the end as well. With our time today, we're going to scratch the surface of 3 main ideas that's going to help future-proof your business. But after the session, please feel free to reach out to me if you want to dig deeper into any of these ideas that we discussed today. If you're taking notes, write these questions down. And if you're not taking notes, go get a pen and paper and then write these questions down. These are the questions that every manager, every executive, every people leader should be talking about if they want their business to succeed in the future. It's who's in the succession plan, how are they identified, and what are they being taught? Lisa, I see you taking notes. You're getting a gold star already. Love it. So what I'm going to tell you is that you can't get somewhere new by doing the same thing that you've always done. You might have heard that before. Let's start with our first question. Who's in our succession plan? Some people refer to it as who's in your pipeline, or who's sitting on your bench, or who's waiting in the wings. It doesn't matter how you say it. It's all the same thing. Who do you have ready for work and do your work when you stop doing it? Who are you grooming to take over for you? If you've never thought about it, I'm so glad that you're here today. Developing a succession plan is important for so many reasons. Let's take a moment, just type in the chat one reason that you think having a succession plan is important. Why is it important? Peace of mind, Amanda. Yes, sustainability, continuity of business. I like that. Ability, be prepared for the unexpected. Ooh, Christina, to offer fresh perspectives. Yes, knowledge transfer, she says. Wonderful, and to future-proof. Thanks, Gina. These are all wonderful answers. So we all get it. We all understand that it's important. And if you are from the US, just an interesting fact, did you know that it's actually one of the leading reasons cited for mergers and acquisitions in the US back in 2004, so just last year, was a lack of succession planning? That's pretty interesting, I thought, right? You may have already started grooming someone to take over for you. So I'm going to ask you, is the person just like you? You have successfully gotten your organization to achieve success in whatever area of expertise that you are. And that's amazing. So why wouldn't you want another you, right? Because you can't get somewhere new by doing the same thing that you've always done. And your credit union needs to go somewhere new. It needs to be successful in the future. And the future holds new competitors and new legislation requirements and new economic factors, new technology. Right? Did you know, and again, this is just to kind of call out our US friends here, but in December of 2024 in the US, the NCUA board approved a final rule on the topic of succession planning. This new rule requires credit unions to implement a formal succession planning process to support the long-term success of their credit union. And while this has historically been considered kind of more of a resilience function, I think some of you guys kind of wrote that in the chat there, or as part of like a business continuity process, this new rule really positions succession planning as a topic of strategic importance for the credit union industry as a whole. I think it's worth noting, like, as it demonstrates the criticality of this topic for the health and the well-being of your organization, but also that whole credit union system that we talked about at the beginning, right? That almost 75,000 credit unions. So if your successor can't be you, then who is it? I'm going to suggest to you that it's someone who's future-proof. I don't know the person who's going to take your role when you leave, but I can tell you that they're going to have 4 traits to be successful. Let's look at them now. They're going to be future skilled. Your forecasted succession needs need to be based on future skill trends like digital banking and automation. For example, your manager of member support used to need to really be good at de-escalating angry members in your branch. In the future, your manager of member support is going to be required to know Google Analytics, data analytics, integration of third-party vendors into member services. Your successor is going to need skills for the future. Second, we've already established your successor can't be you. So they need to be different than you. And I'm sorry, I don't have time today to kind of go through all the research on this call, but the research is really clear in this. Companies with diverse leadership teams perform better than ones without. So your successor is going to be diverse. Future leaders need to be proactive. They are going to seek out the business. They're not going to wait for the business to come to them. They're also going to be able to seek solutions now for future problems. And they're also going to be a continuous learner. The pace of change is too fast to have anyone stuck in their ways. What once was considered like an emerging process or technology a few years ago, like, for example, tap to pay, it's now expected table stakes for financial services. So your successor is going to need to have a growth mindset. What do you guys think? What other attributes would you add to this list? Go ahead and type them in the chat. Flexible, manage change well, yes. They'll need to be knowledgeable. Youthful, more youthful than us, right, Don? Think critically, adaptable. Oh, Alice, we're going to talk about resilience a little bit later too. Brave, that's a good one. Understanding the cooperative principle, right? Being rooted in our history and our foundation. High emotional intelligence. Yes, there are many that we could add to this list. So who is in our pipeline? We've talked about those key traits, but my second question to you is, where do they come from, or how do we identify them? First, they could be self-identified. These are people who are internally motivated to achieve a specific career goal. But we as leaders need to know their plans and be able to paint them into our company's future picture and support their growth. To best support these future leaders, we need to have formal career conversations with our staff. And I don't care if it's the manager's responsibility or HR's responsibility or learning and development's responsibility or everybody's. There isn't a right or a wrong, but there needs to be consistency and continuity with those conversations. Just on camera there, just raise your hand if you corporately have a required time frame for career conversations with staff. Maybe it's like once a quarter or once a year. Raise your hand. Do you guys have any requirements? Just a couple, not too many. These conversations are critical because as current leaders, we need to be aligning our employees' career aspirations with specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound goals. We need to help them create personal development plans. Let me share you a story, a quick one here. So we just had a teller in our organization who joined us about 4 months ago. This person put together a personal development plan to want to be an assistant branch manager in 6 months. This person is talented. They are engaged. They have tons of potential. And when we found this out, this isn't a person that we would want to lose, is basically what I'm saying. But when we found this out, we had to sit this person down and have an honest career conversation with them. We mapped out their learning plan and we divided it into smaller chunks. And the employee realized for himself that 6 months was not achievable to go from being a teller to an assistant branch manager in our organization. And that there were other positions in between that they maybe hadn't thought about. So this career conversation with this employee allowed us to focus on those developmental activities. And we ultimately got together to paint him into the future picture of our organization. And now we have a multi-year development plan for this individual. And instead of frustrating him because he couldn't get promoted fast enough, and I know you have those employees in your organization too, we were able to retain him, right? And he's now looking forward to the multiple years of his development. Those are the conversations that we need to be having. Secondly, I would say that they could be manager identified. So these are the individuals that maybe you have tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, I've noticed you're really great at this. Have you ever considered becoming that? Then they say, yeah, that sounds great. And you guys kind of enter into a mentorship relationship. Or maybe you bring someone else in if that's more appropriate. You bring them under your wing, you develop them. Have you ever told someone that you believed in them? Or that you could see them at the next level? What wording did you use? Go ahead, come off mute or type in the chat. What did you say to them? Well done. We need more employees like you. Thanks, Don. You have great potential. How invigorating is that? Hey, Bob? I see you in the future vision of the organization, right? Sandra, you're painting them into that picture. If you are on this call and you're thinking, oh, I've never done that before, what's stopping you? You can be a mentor. You can be a great mentor. A great mentor doesn't need decades of experience. They need the right heart posture. And if you are on this call today, I can almost guarantee you, because you're wanting to learn more about effective succession management, that your heart is likely in the right place. Mentors can be found within our credit unions. They can also be within our network of credit unions. Many credit unions I know are smaller, and maybe you don't feel like you have the right resources to have a formal internal mentorship program. That's okay. Informal mentorships are powerful too. And there's also a lot of value in strengthening our credit union system with larger territorial mentorship programs, whether that's national or state or provincial or island wide. I encourage you to get a buddy branch or a buddy credit union and connect together, make some connections and create a mentorship program together. I myself had a mentor from our national association. I learned a ton. And then I've also mentored multiple people outside of our province from other credit unions. As their mentor, I was kind of teaching, but also I learned a ton there as well. There is such an awesome just connectedness and support within our credit union system that I just urge you to tap into. But it's not only important to be a mentor, but you got to be a sponsor too. What's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, just to clarify? You can come off of mute or you can share your thoughts. The difference between a mentor and a sponsor.
I think I might have this one. I'll give it a shot. So mentor would be somebody that you help them by what your knowledge has been in your successes to give them inspiration or inspire them by what you've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And then a sponsor is somebody that sees somebody and their actions and then gives the backing. If they're asking for a particular job, you're going to say, yes, I've noticed what they've done and I'm sponsoring them in their abilities.
Great answer, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming off the mute and sharing that. A mentor is a guide, a sounding board, a coach, a support, right? A sponsor talks about you positively in the rooms that you are not, and they advocate to get you into those rooms. A great example that I have from our organization, we had a senior wealth manager who was retiring, and we didn't at the time have a formal mentorship program or sponsorship program in place. And he saw one of the branch managers that was interested in the wealth side of the business, and he gave him opportunities to lead wealth challenges with his peers, other branch managers, and he gave him opportunity to attend like district wealth meetings and things like that. And through that informal mentorship and partnership, once the gentleman retired, that branch manager was really positioned well. He wasn't guaranteed the job. Of course, we never can guarantee, but he was positioned really well with all of those development experiences and opportunities and activities that he was given to take over the role. And he ended up being the successful candidate for that role. And now he's even gone on to manage our entire retail side. So we want to see that mentorship and that sponsorship be an active part of our credit unions. The third way I want to mention that people are identified as successors is corporately. So this usually occurs behind closed doors in some sort of talent planning or succession management exercise. The results of these sessions is usually kept confidential amongst those involved. But I want to ask you, what's the risk of that? What's the risk of keeping them a secret, the results? Everybody is going to be such a fast typer by the end of this. It limits the scope of the candidates, Lena. Yes, what else? People don't know that they're part of the plan. Yes, the entire goal of the exercise is to increase retention and strengthen our succession plan, right? So I urge you, please don't keep these results a secret. Instead, action them appropriately in a timely manner. Some of you might be sitting here on this call unsure of what I mean when I say a talent planning exercise. Let's just take a quick look in one example, just so that we're kind of on a level set together. I know that we come from all over the world with different size credit unions, different expertise, different technologies. And to be honest, you might be in a credit union where you already have a talent planning exercise corporately and it's integrated into your human resources system and there's an algorithm and there's AI, and that's fantastic. But if you're like us and you don't, here is a tangible tool that you can take back to your credit union and start using with your leadership tomorrow. This is called a 9-box, and it's one of the more simple talent planning exercises, but simple does not mean ineffective. In fact, this is actually the one that we use to paint our corporate picture here at Kawartha. The way you use it is that you take all of the employees within your scope, and the scope could be a department or a district or your whole organization, and you rate them low, medium, or high on their current performance and their future potential. And future potential is going to factor things in like past experience and aptitude, attitude, maybe the education that they have. And once you give them a rating, they fall within one of these 9 boxes. The labels I've put on there, they can be anything you want. And you could even like theme them to your corporate brand if that was appropriate, or they can be generic, or you can just have no labels. Here's an example of plotting your staff. And you kind of get this corporate picture of who's in a red or orange, yellow, or green box. Red are those who are considered a talent risk. Orange, we see either as average performance, but no potential, or low performance, but we believe they could have some potential. These are the ones we want to manage closely for sure. The yellow are our average employees, our core team, as well as those who do their job really well, but don't want to change roles, or maybe they have a barrier such as education and they won't be able to change roles. And then we have kind of 2 different green colors, one denoting those who will be ready in the future and one's denoting those who are ready now. So I mentioned that it's critical not to keep these results a secret. And it won't mean that you go outside after this exercise and you go, hey, George and Talia, you're in a red box. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. But rather, this information must be actioned appropriately. So after completing this exercise, go ahead, type in the chat, what do you think might be an appropriate action for George and Talia, who are identified as low performers in their roles with little to no potential? Nadia is saying, have a conversation with them. Yeah. Put them on a performance plan. Okay. In your organization one-on-one chats, start to ask some questions why, right? We could maybe start to coach them. You can put them on that performance improvement plan, and in your organization, whoever is responsible to be involved in that process would take those appropriate actions. Okay. What about the other end of the spectrum? What about that top green box, Heidi and Oscar? Type in the chat, what might be an appropriate action for us to take corporately for them? Yes, Jim, paint them into that future picture, right? Discuss what is your next 5-year plan. Alice is saying, have a one-on-one conversation with them. Give them opportunities, Katrina's saying. Yes. So creating that personal development plan with them, or if you aren't their direct manager, engage their manager to help them do that, but lets them know that you see them in the future of the organization, right? Lets them know that we care about them. Repeating what I've said earlier, career conversations, right? They help gain alignment between employee goals and corporate goals. So what if I told Heidi in my career conversation, Heidi, I can see you as being the next CEO. And she says, I don't want that. Isn't that better for us to know now? Maybe you painted someone in your organization as a star performer, ready for promotion, but they see themselves more as like a trusted professional, content to continue what they're doing until retirement. Well, that's certainly going to mess up your painting. My point is there needs to be collaboration and action as a result of this exercise, and doing the exercise alone itself in isolation has little to no value. This exercise could also feed other development programs. I saw some of you guys were typing that in the chat. Maybe you have to be in a green box to be part of your internal emerging leaders program, or continuous learning funding becomes accessible to you if you're in a green box. Or maybe people in your top green box get to choose one conference a year that they go to. Whatever it is, your organization decides for itself. But I just urge you that it's proactive and not reactive. Don't wait for Heidi or Oscar to hand in their resignation letter. And you're like, but you were in a green box. You could have been the next CEO. It's going to be too little too late. Okay, proactive engagement in this is key. And this was just a very quick glance at a 9 box. So as I mentioned, there is other tools. This is just one example. If anyone wants to chat about this after the session, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. I'll be happy to walk through this a little bit more in depth with you. The third, but no matter how you identify these people or how they are identified, I can't advocate enough for implementing an emerging leaders program in your organization. Again, depending on the size, shape of your credit union, it's going to look a little different. It could be a variety of different ways that people get enrolled in the program. As mentioned, one way could be a result of that talent planning exercise. Everybody in the 3-3 box now becomes eligible to be enrolled in the Emerging Leaders Program, just for an example. Although each Emerging Leaders Program is going to look a little different, I just have 5 quick components that I want to talk to you about that I recommend you include in your Emerging Leaders Program. I'd strongly advocate that there be an ongoing learning component. So that could be a series of internal webinars maybe your company has created. It could be leveraging external resources like the Precipio licensing, where they use benchmarking to kind of show the improvement of skills over time. It could be a personalized learning plan or role-specific learning plan from your central or your national organization. I just have ours from the Canadian Credit Union Association here as an example. Or it could be eHub, and I saw Sandra McDowell was on the call today. So the eLeadership Academy has this 12-month program, and we use it here at Kawartha, and we love it because those 12 monthly topics actually align with our 10 leadership competencies that we've identified for our organization. So lots of different options when you think about kind of the ongoing learning component. An Emerging Leaders program needs a formalized plan for the individuals that are involved, kind of like a treasure map. The participant should know who's involved, what their destination is, what challenges or tasks they need to complete or overcome, and what does success look like. I'd also recommend a peer collaboration piece. Sometimes this looks like a group project or a deliverable to an executive team, maybe solve our corporate problem is sometimes used. I can't get into kind of all the benefits of that peer learning has on an organization and an individual, but trust me, there's a lot. You're going to need a mentorship component. People are going to need some guidance and advice from time to time. And the last thing I would suggest is to include in your Emerging Leaders program is corporate visibility. So what I mean by that is this program isn't a secret. It's not an HR program or an L&D like a learning and development program. It's a corporate program supported by all managers in all departments. Your executive team know who these people are. And again, this could be done in a variety of ways. You could include people in the selection process or in the final deliverable. My picture here just shows like someone presenting to a panel, or through different shadowing opportunities. Take a moment, type in the chat. If you have an emerging leaders program in your credit union already in place, what component do your participants find most effective? Just curious to know. You can type in the chat or you can come off of mute. So learning about the history of cooperatives, concern for their well-being and leadership coaching, excellent mentorship, meeting with the leadership teams, exposure, Emma, yes. Training, yes. I see some people also use the e-leadership academy. I do want to just say, if you don't have an emerging leaders program, that's okay. Sandra McDowell over at the e-leadership academy has a great simple framework to get you started. You can reach out to her and she will share it. You can reach out to me. I'm happy to share it as well. But it's very low lift and integrates some great ideas and just that kind of personal development plan that you're creating with these future leaders. So if you're looking at this slide and you're like, Dana, you forgot to put content on this slide. No, I didn't. We've spoken about the who and the how. I want to answer the question of what are we teaching them? What is the content of the development plans for these individuals? For the start of this, I want to answer some answers to this question. Let's look at a job description for a credit union executive in 2015. What responsibilities or attributes do you think were included for a leader of a credit union 10 years ago? Type them in the chat or come off mute. Well, Sandra even put the link that you have broken. Thanks, Sandra. 10 years ago, what did they need to know? Problem solving, communication, business analytics, financial, they needed to know their job. A lot of our executives 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they started as tellers and came up through the ranks, right? I picked just 4 of the top ones I found. So they needed to manage people well, they needed to be a problem solver, they need to be member focused and have great judgment and decision making. My question is, what's changed in 10 years? Do you think we would look for those things now, or are there more important ones? And what about 10 years from now? Type in the chat, what is a credit union executive going to need in 2035? What do you think? Technology acumen. Yes, Diane. Absolutely. Yes, Winnie. Technology has changed so much. We were talking about that today, actually, in my team. AI knowledge, Don. AI, a couple of times. Colleen's saying strategic planning. Yes, change management. In 2035, again, I just picked a few: digital skills and data analytics, looking at those complex regulations in cybersecurity. Instead of just members coming to branches, we're now looking at an omni-channel presence, right? And they all got to speak to one another. And then having an individualized member experience on every single one of those platforms. Right? Leaders now, and more important, leaders in 2035 are operating in a completely different environment than 10 years ago. So it's only obvious that the attributes you needed in 2015 are different than today. And no one has a crystal ball for the future, but we can see these trends of operating in a more complex environment. So we can safely assume that what got us here today won't successfully get us to our desired future. What you need to teach your successor is different than what you know now and what you do now. Lean in for a sec. Can I ask you a personal question? When was the last time your job description was updated? If it was when you were hired, with the exception of the person who was maybe here 2 years ago. It's time to dust it off. Okay, successors look to job descriptions to understand which future positions they can see themselves in. And if it's been a while, they're not going to be able to paint themselves into the future of your corporate picture accurately or effectively. So we understand that what we are teaching our successors must be future focused. But what knowledge, skills, and abilities do they need in the future? A great exercise, if you've never done it, to take back to your organization is to have your current leaders or your executive team imagine 10 years in the future. What products and services do they predict will be offered? What processes are going to be automated? What do they think the corporate culture will feel like? What do they think the corporate structure will look like? Then imagine their successor in that environment. And what knowledge, skills, and abilities do they need to be successful in that role? Use those to update the current job description. Then build a development plan around those skills. We also need to foster an environment where staff from different departments can collaborate and bolster their cross-functional skills and just broader organizational knowledge, where everyone understands the business as a whole and how the organization works together as one to achieve a goal and a purpose. Extrapolating the current trend that we see now of like project teams and scrum teams, we can predict a future of flatter organizations. So future leaders are going to have strong business acumen. We saw that one in the chat, as well as be more dynamic in order to succeed. Past leaders had to be experts in their field. Now there's just too much to know. It's impossible to know it all. So future leaders instead, I'm going to suggest, need to be great coaches, enabling and empowering others to get their jobs done without micromanagement. Holding people capable through coaching is an incredibly powerful tool to have in your toolbox, and one that I am told is incredibly underutilized. Lastly, I'd say that the pace of change today is fast, and our successful future leaders will need to learn to be nimble and resilient. And you guys said that too at the beginning. And you may not recognize my picture here of Jack, who in the European nursery rhyme was told, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jump over that candlestick. But someone who is nimble and resilient, they embrace change and they stay curious and they keep an opportunistic outlook on things. But I don't know about you, but nimble and resilient are not easy traits to learn. So go ahead and type in the chat, how would you teach people to be nimble and resilient? What would you include in someone's development plan to build those skills? Ooh. Helena says perspective them, give them a perspective, give them a view from the lost. Maybe a day in the shoes of, right? Sandra says challenge them. Alice says work on their emotional intelligence. Yes. Never stop learning. Sharing your stories. Yes. Exposing them to scenarios, giving them case studies, real ones. Have them shadow in the good times and the tough times, right? Even that tough stuff. Continuous education. Give them exposure to fast-paced projects. Awesome. Great answers, everyone. So in our session today, we spoke about 3 questions current leaders in our organizations need to be asking themselves. Who's in your succession plan? How are they identified? And what are they being taught? And through our conversations, 3 main themes kept emerging. You can't get somewhere new by doing what you've always done. It is our job as current leaders, our responsibility to paint our successors into the future painting of the business. And future leaders will not be successful if we only teach them all that we know. They need to know more than we know. It has been a pleasure speaking with you today. I want to thank you again to WalkU for giving me this opportunity and this time. If anyone has any additional thoughts or questions, I'd be happy to field them now, or we're also happy to connect. I mentioned at a later date. My contact details are on the slide as well.
Yeah, if you have questions, feel free to turn your camera on and perhaps raise your hand, and you can ask them directly too, Dana, if you'd like. I mean, this is something that we talk about all the time at World Council of Credit Union succession and making sure there's one in place. And do you find that it is a lot of times something that's lower down the totem pole in priority than it should be?
That's great. I didn't know if you wanted me to answer or everybody answer, but it's a great question. And I would argue that you can't afford that. You can't afford to have it be lower on the totem pole. Someone, and I forget exactly who it was earlier in the chat, said that there's a cost to not having a great succession plan in place. And that's I think it's so true. So if it ever is, I would say, don't let it be.
We have a question from the audience. Jenny Lynn Bailey, my good friend. What's your question?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Many times we think about succession planning in the office environment, employees. What suggestions would you have for succession planning at the board and committee levels, especially when some people want to stay on year after year?
Great questions. I would encourage you, if you don't already, to have some terms of reference around that board and that board succession, some identified roles and responsibilities to talk about terms of length specifically, as well as if you have a board chair and a vice chair, for example, maybe they're a vice chair for 1 year and then they become the board chair for 1 year. Really kind of working through identifying that in a terms of reference document. In terms of getting new, younger blood, if you will, in some of those, on those boards and in those committees, I would urge you to look to your membership and say, what are we doing to kind of attract, where are we advertising for this role? How are we positioning it as well? Would be some of the things that I would urge you to consider. Did anyone else? I know I mentioned we have years of experience on the call as well. Did anyone else want to jump in and help answer that when we talk about board succession?
Not everyone all at once.
That's okay. Great question, Jenny Lynn. Thank you so much.
One of the things I was wondering as I was listening to your presentation, do you find that there are dangers sometimes that there are people who need to develop a succession plan for themselves and they don't necessarily want the competition? It's something that threatens them as a leader. Do you find that that's an issue at times?
Yeah, and that makes me sad to hear that, but for sure it can happen. Not only that competition or that feeling of maybe being urged out or moved out from that role, but also, there could be multiple people who have development plans to be your next CEO, right? It can, and if that gets out and that's public knowledge, that can kind of create some competition or some negative feelings towards each other as well. But I think what we need to do in those cases where that particular individual is feeling maybe threatened by people having development plans into their role is to really talk about the success of the organization beyond that person, right? Talking about the foundation that person has built, talking about the success that they've had in the role. And really, that person won't want that all to be for naught, right? They want the legacy to live on. And so really kind of putting it into the terms of what legacy are you leaving? I know you're not going anywhere yet, but what is your legacy? Who's taking those things on? Who's upkeeping those programs that you put in place, or and really kind of having them look at it from a different kind of mindset in terms of a more holistic organizational mindset, I think is important.
It's a great answer. And I agree that putting that, knowing what your mission is and knowing that the organization comes first, I think that's what people have to think about. Viola, who heard that last question and answer, has a comment here. In our board charter, we included a clause where 4 members stay on the board every time we elect a new board. So yeah, it looks like there are definitely board charters out there that address this, and probably all of them should. Any other questions for Dana, as we still have plenty of time? We still have about 15 minutes left, and I know we still have almost everyone. This is one of those rare ones where almost everyone who joined at the beginning has stayed on for the full 45 minutes, which is great, and we really appreciate that. But definitely some more chances to answer some questions. Do you find that certain positions or certain personality types, let's put it this way, are a little bit more prone to saying, I want to be the next mentor to someone. I want to teach this person to be there and be ready when so-and-so leaves, or when so-and-so, or maybe when I leave. Is that something that it's not natural to everyone, and there are certain people who fit that mold better than others?
Absolutely. And some people are better at it than others.
Yeah.
And so really finding those individuals in your organization who are good at it, and leveraging them into those roles and those positions is really important. And the other way around too. If someone wants to be a mentor and they maybe, or they aren't really great at it, I think the organization has kind of a role to play in developing that skill set too, because it doesn't come natural to everybody. I've often said as a trainer, and we rely a lot on in-person training or shadowing. I've often said, just because you're good at your job doesn't mean you're good at training your job.
Yep.
So
Yep.
really looking maybe in those instances where there's managers or leaders who are maybe not the best at it, that's where you can lean on kind of your corporate function of human resources or learning and development. People who have a passion for that, you can lean on external resources and leadership training as well, or partnering them up with an alternative manager who maybe is a little bit better in that, or using that as an opportunity to grow those skill sets with that individual. I think those are all kind of viable options. Daisy, you had a question?
Yes. So I come from quite a bit of a smaller credit union, like we're quite small, but we are still in the process of starting succession planning. I wouldn't call it a fear, but thing that comes to question is, we obviously want these candidates to know that they are in our succession planning, want to build a development plan, but let's say that they're going for a VP position, and that's kind of like a long way down the road before that VP plans on ever stepping up. How do you keep them engaged if there is not a lot of stepping stones up into that position without like losing that interest over time, or even eventually losing that talent because they're getting tired of waiting so long for them to have that opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question, and definitely a real concern that a lot of us have. There's kind of two answers. I'll answer this. One is, it's not a ladder, it's a lattice. And so looking at what positions next to you can I learn that are going to strengthen my skills in that VP position. I'll use myself as an example. Let's pretend that I wanted to be the vice president of member services. I know human resources, I know learning and development. I don't know the retail operations side, the branch life, right? And so maybe I leave my role and I become a branch manager, which is an adjacent kind of role in my organization. And I spend time in a branch manager role before I would, become that VP. The second thing I would urge people to do when talking about development plans is focus less on the position and the position title if you're looking at developing someone, but rather what skills, knowledge, and abilities do they need. So I'm not waiting 10 years to be the next VP, but rather in those 10 years, I'm strengthening my leadership skills, I'm strengthening my data analytics skills, my financial statement understanding, break that VP job down and look at what skills do you need. And then maybe, it's 10 skills and you work on one per year, that sort of thing. Or I'm switching roles to, like I said, in that lattice of an organization. I can strengthen my financial statement acumen if I get into the finance department, those sorts of things. And you end up, instead of trying to climb a corporate ladder, you're part of this organizational lattice.
That can be a scary thing, right? I mean, to the example you gave of, well, I do this, I'm an expert at this, I want to try this, but first I should get some experience. You use the example as a branch manager. I'm sure that a lot of people think, oh, I don't know, that's kind of a step down. And then is it really going to pay off? I mean, is that a tough thing to get people in that headspace for?
She might hate me for it, but I'm going to use a real life story in our credit union. So we said those exact words to somebody in our credit union and they didn't like it and they left. And 3 years later, they came back and they're going to be in that role that we suggested that they strengthen kind of their management skills in. And so sometimes it's just a matter of a mindset shift. But again, as we think about roles not as a job title, but rather a composition of a way of skills and attributes and a way to kind of project those, I think that those titles become kind of maybe less important, right? Looking at the job as this is an area or an opportunity where you can develop X, Y, Z. I think that's important.
That's really interesting. People are loving, by the way, it's not a ladder, it's a lattice. Where'd you get that?
It's not mine. I didn't make that up. I've heard it before on calls like these.
That's great. We still have a few minutes left if anybody does have any further questions. And, I really appreciate your time, Dana. And this has been, the great thing about a webinar like this is really, it doesn't really matter what position you have or what you do for your credit union. I mean, this really affects everybody. It affects everybody from a management position down to an employee position, because depending on where you are, you're going to have different perspectives on it. And you've got to make sure that it's something that you're keeping an eye on. And I've seen people do that well. I've seen people do that not so well. And so it's definitely something that if they're not prioritizing it, it's going to impact. I mean, that's just my personal view of being in a lot of different jobs. If they're not thinking about it, they're going to get caught off guard a lot of times, especially in the managerial roles. I think that they're going to find out, oh, I didn't recognize this person had that. And now they went over here to another place and they're doing great there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just I mentioned it kind of at the beginning of my presentation as well, but just the regulators are noticing that this is a problem for our system as a whole, and so they're building it into the legislation that we need to have these formal succession plans in place. So, yeah,
that is really interesting. Well, we're coming up close to the top of the hour here. I don't see any more questions. And if anybody does come up with one while I'm closing here, by all means, we'll head back to Dana. Dana, I really appreciate your time. Great presentation. And I'm really happy that you joined us today.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. Thank you everyone for joining and for that great participation in the chat and your bravery to give out those answers as well. Again, I put my contact information in the chat there. Feel free to reach out if anyone has any questions you didn't want to ask in a group setting. Happy to connect. Have a great day or night.
Thanks.
Bye.
And if you enjoyed today's virtual event and you want to watch it again or you want to tell others about it, just want to let you know it's going to be available later today on the World Council of Credit Unions YouTube channel. That is at youtube.com/WOCCU. That's youtube.com/WOCU. And there are a couple of other upcoming events I want to let you know about. First, we are hosting the second WOCU workshop of 2025 next Thursday, May 1st. This is on banking in the age of generative AI. There is a $250 fee to participate in this workshop, but it will provide you with a deep dive on critical issues like the evolution of AI and how it's reshaping financial services worldwide, practical applications like predictive analytics, fraud prevention, and personalized member experiences, challenges like data privacy, ethical considerations, and skill shortages, and strategies for fostering a pro-AI culture and building a roadmap for implementation. You can learn more about all of that in this session, Banking in the Age of Generative AI. This workshop is available by scanning the QR code on your screen or going to woku.org/workshops. You can go there and find out more about how you can register for this great event. And finally, if you want to participate in other great educational sessions in person this time, registration is still open for the 2025 World Credit Union Conference. World Council will be hosting the 20th anniversary of this premier global event in beautiful Stockholm, Sweden from July 14th to the 16th under the theme, The Future is Cooperative. Simply scan the QR code here on your phone to register, or if you don't have the phone handy, head to wcuc.org to learn more and register for what promises to be truly a historic event. We would love to see all of you there in Sweden this summer. That's it for today's webinar. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.